Hello friends, and welcome to another figure study where I'm back with still more of this stuff because I just can't help myself. Today we're taking a look at Tobot v King Fortran, which is a combination of Hyde, Regent, Power Loader, and Big Boss. Though as you might be able to tell based on the look of these vehicles, they're not the individual robot toys. Though in a rare twist, I actually do have the individual robot toys for most of these. I don't have Regent anymore because I sold that off a little while back and kind of wish I hadn't, but them's the breaks. So right off the bat, this color scheme is it's certainly a choice, in particular with Hyde here. I don't know why they went with this color scheme for everybody. I kinda hate it. I will admit, the colors have grown on me more since I've gotten the figure in hand and have transformed it a few times, and just looking at the combine mode, I think it's a really cool figure, and the colors I can deal with. It doesn't bother me as much when it's fully combined, but this was a choice. I'm kind of assuming that it's because they wanted to get away from the kind of standard red, white, and blue color schemes that they went with for a lot of their combiners. Because let's be real, a lot of the recent Tobot V combiners are red, white, and blue. Those are the three primary colors that they use for all of them. Point is, I think they wanted to get away from the red, white, and blue color scheme, which is fine, but why this? Why Crayola primary colors, and also whatever the heck green they put on Hyde? I don't get that. These colors are, to put it charitably, not great. Anyway, since I have the means, let's take a look at some of these vehicles with their full-size counterparts. So here we've got Hyde with Hyde. Oh, let me readjust. So here we've got Hyde with Hyde, and you can see that this Hyde is a bit smaller than the other one. It's not a huge difference in this case, but it's definitely smaller, and also the colors are garbage. And I mean that literally. This looks like Oscar the Grouch. Still, same plane, same overall design, same overall shape. There's that. Here is Power Loader with Power Loader, and yeah, the differences in size here are way more noticeable, and the differences in color are, I guess, slightly more minimal. It's still very obvious that the colors are different here, but main robot Power Loader is much more of a yellowish orange color, and Combiner Power Loader is just straight up orange and blue. And yet, it is kind of funny how the tiny version, in some cases, the paint deco is actually a little bit better. The amount of paint apps are kind of similar between the two of them, and the tinier one does have this added detail along the arm of the bucket, so it's interesting. Here we've got the two big bosses, and again, the paint apps are actually pretty comparable across both of them. I mean, there are some differences here and there, like the rear window, the little bit around the toe key, and little bits next to the rear lights. We've got the headlights, the blinkers, there's actually now these stripes along the top. That's relatively comparable, it's just the colors. And again, the size difference between these two big bosses is a little bit less dramatic than with Power Loader. Unfortunately, I don't have Regent anymore to do a direct comparison to his little combiner counterpart, but I do have Wild Chief, which is not quite the same thing, but we're going with it anyway. And here you can see that, yeah, Wild Chief is also noticeably larger than Regent. And so, might as well do a little bit more size comparisonning, right? Since we're already doing comparisons. So here's everybody with Terricle, and as you probably expect, Terricle is monstrous compared to all of these individual vehicles, because they're smaller because they're supposed to combine. Here they all are with the Standard Deluxe Squad, and as you can see, the smallest of them, which is weirdly enough Power Loader, which you would think that the big construction vehicle would actually be one of the larger ones. But anyway, even Power Loader, which is the smallest one, is a little bit larger than a Standard Deluxe. And here they all are with the duck tank. Okay, so I feel like we kind of went over most of this already, but let's real quick give the individual vehicles a little bit more attention. So we'll start with the worst one, Hyde. And I mean, I guess that's mean, but Hyde in my mind is the worst one because, one, these colors are atrocious, and two, he doesn't really do anything. Yeah, he's part of the combination, but the way he integrates, it's not essential for the robot at all. He's the one, as is the case with a lot of the flying ones, that just kind of becomes a fancy backpack, and that's kind of a shame. But as you can see, there is pretty much all the same detailing that was in Hyde. The shapes are the same. There's obviously some differences, like you don't get the arms coming across here because it doesn't transform like that. It's fine. I don't know what else to say. I really don't like the colors on this. That green is not great in its own, but like that orange does not work with it at all. Also, like when we get this guy fully combined, you'll see that this does not complement any of the other colors either. Well, I guess technically it complements red, but it doesn't work. Anyway, to transform Airhide, we're going to fold up the landing gear, going to rip the tail off, and then rip the tail in half. And that's all we do for the back half of Airhide, so this is going to go off to the side. And then for the front half, I want to rotate the wings up, so they rotate around like this, basically inverted. And you can rotate it either way. You can rotate it up and over or under. There's no specific way you've got to rotate it, which is nice. Once this is rotated, split it in half, and there's this kind of accordion joint that you want to fold down and straighten out like that. And this will be the fancy backpack that I mentioned. Next up is Big Boss, and Big Boss also has a lot of the same detailing and general paint deco that the main single robot toy has, as we saw. It's missing a few, and also the colors are, again, not great. Like this red and this yellow, just like they're not as bad as Airhide's color scheme, but this is not a particularly fun color combination in my mind. Appreciate that they painted the rim silver though. Also, it's weird, I noticed that Big Boss and Airhide are the 2 out of the 4 vehicles in this set that don't have their number on them. Airhide does not have the 06, Big Boss does not have the 05, but Regent has the 04, and Power Loader has the 07. I don't know why that is. I feel like they could have easily put the numbers on either of them in both cases, but fine. I mean, in Airhide's case, I guess I get it because the number was along the bottom of the plane, but like Big Boss, it was on the side of the bus. I don't know why they left that out, but whatever. Let's move on to the transformation. So, to transform Big Boss, we're going to pop these panels out and move them down, and they will clip in on the side here. And from this angle, you can see that it just pops out from here, pops out from there, and then clips in. You want to slide these pieces down, and they will click into place. Move this entire chunk down and up, as the knees are kind of on this accordion hinge thing. It's a little tricky to get them lined up. There you go. Get those straightened out. I'm going to pop this section off, and this will swing down and just kind of tuck around the back, and this flap will fold down. I'm going to split the legs, because that's obviously what these are. Pull out the feet, and these feet have a very like Great Iron Admiral motif to me, just like those engine-looking things facing front. I don't know, it just reminds me of that guy. And now to get the feet back in, this uses a similar thing to Big Boss's feet, where you have this little button that pops out. You want to push that in order to push the feet back in. When you pull them out, it comes back down and pops out and like locks it in place. And around the back, pop these doors open, pull out the heels, and the heels will actually clip into the back of the leg. And then close the door. That. Flip it out, and there we go. And now, Big Boss's pants. On to Power Loader, and Power Loader is probably well, not the simplest, but he's definitely the most interesting transformation out of the entire set. First off, again, looking at the detailing, it's pretty nice. The colors are fine. The orange and blue are complementary, kind of, but like this particular tone of orange and this particular tone of blue don't work that well together. This whole set is just kind of like black with the colors. One thing I did notice though the other day is for some reason the paint on the 7 for Power Loader on mine is very faded. Like they only applied one very base coat. So it's a little bit distracting how dim that is compared to the 0. I'm thinking I might go in and paint over that myself, or I might leave it, I don't know. Anyway, to transform Power Loader, we're going to just split him in half, and this is really cool. So the bucket flips around, kind of like with the original robot mode. To flip out these little bits, also like the original robot mode. Then this entire section flips down, which is similar to the legs, except it takes the cab section with it. So that flips around, and now this is the really cool part. The cab section itself flips up and around, and then opens up to make a hand. And now we've got an arm, and I just really like that transformation. It's really nifty how just by flipping this out and around, and then flipping this back up, it like makes the cab section disappear into the arm and also reorients it as a hand. That's just very cool. So that is Power Loader as arms. And finally we have Regent, and Regent is probably the least terrible looking in terms of colors in this set. It's pretty close to his original colors, except it's more of a blue than a turquoise. Overall, it looks pretty good. Some of the details are a little lacking, but there are some nice separations here with like the bars for the cage up top, the little lights, whatever this thing is on the back, and the lights in front. One thing that's kind of weird to me about this, though, is there are pins here that make it look like the wheels move, but they don't. I've tried moving them, and it just does not work. I guess they just did it to separate out the colors. It's probably what it is. Anyway, to transform Regent, first we're going to flip the front end all the way up. I'm going to come to the back and pull these wheels out, and they'll click into place. Then we're going to get these little red bits out, and this can be a little tricky, but it is doable, as you can see. Just flip those out. Now we want to, again from the underside, pop this door open and flip out the main robot head. And it might be easier to start this little bit here. You can pull this section down, and that will push the head up a little bit. And that'll make it a little bit easier to get the head out of there. Push the door back up, and now we can flip this down all the way, and that will give us the torso section. And now we can talk a little bit about the Tokey, which is this little thing that looks kind of like a weird stoplight that doesn't really have any place to store in any of the vehicle modes, which stinks. And we'll look at this a little bit more later, but it's got more or less all the primary colors from this set in there, and again, they don't really look great together. But this stores in the combined mode chest, so just put that in there and that'll clip in place and lock everything in. And you don't need to put it into the chest for the combined mode, but it does store there. Now to combine everything, so we're going to bring in Big Boss's pants, and I find it's easiest to push this flap down a little bit. For some reason, this being up, sometimes it doesn't mess up the combination, but it can make things a little bit harder to get locked in. So just push that down, grab Regent, and Regent will slide in and click into place, and that'll be nice and locked in. Let's push that back up, and there we've got the upper body attached. And just for the heck of it, let's do Air Hyde next. So Air Hyde clips on the sides of the legs, and they can only go on one side because this side of Big Boss has the posts, this side has the clips, so there's only one way you can clip these on. Those clip on like so, and like so, and they actually kind of conform to the slope of the feet too, which is pretty cool. It's some good foresight there. Unfortunately, they didn't have that foresight with the color scheme. Now to attach the backpack, and it clips in 4 places. There's these bits here, 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 and here, and these bits here, 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 and here. I find it's easiest to do the lower ones first, then the upper ones. So just bring in Air Hyde and clip in the lower spots, and then along the top, just give them a little extra push to really solidify that backpack in place. Now that backpack is not coming off. And lastly, bring in Power Loader, and Power Loader is actually a little bit like old school Tobot, where instead of plugging in or anything like that, it actually slides down and attaches, and the ratchet joints for the shoulders are actually in these little nubbins that we pulled out. So it's a little bit like Quatron in that regard, but yeah, this slides over the joint and clicks down, so that will hold in pretty solidly. I wouldn't like pick the figure up by the arm or anything like that, but it does hold. And here we have King Fortran in his combined mode, and this thing it's cool, but those colors, I mean those colors. In particularly Air Hyde, that green just does not work with any of this. I don't know what they were thinking. The orange also. I can't help but feel like this would have looked better if they left the original robot colors intact, rather than trying to get all vaguely cohesive with it, and really they're not, because they're still separated out. Like, there's a little bit, and I do think this is cool, the shared color across the kind of shoulder pads that are made by Power Loader and the torso made by Regent. I do think that's cool, how it kind of gives it this torso armor kind of look in the way that the colors work together and the way that the bits all kind of come together. but it's not enough to justify the rest of this. And the separation is still kind of the same across the different vehicles. So like if these were their original colors, instead we'd have white and blue for the air hide bits. We'd have more of a yellowish color rather than this orange for power loader, more of a turquoise for the torso for Regent, and then more of a green and white for the pants. Like I said, I don't hate them anymore. I was definitely not feeling them at first, but having them in hand, it's not as bad, but this could have been an absolute slam dunk, home run, whatever you want to call it, if they had done a less hideous last crayons left in the box color scheme for it. Let's go with that. But ignoring the awful colors, the robot itself is actually really cool. I like the proportions. He does have the kind of extremely small thighs, but we'll see when we do the articulation that the knees actually sit a little bit lower than they look, so when you move the legs, it's not as bad. I, again, really like the power loader transformation, and it gives him some pretty solid looking arms. The kind of bulked out torso that you get from the chunkiest parts of Regent works really nice. I think the wing pack that Airhide gives him is pretty neat. Like, you don't need Airhide at all. You could just take Airhide off and it wouldn't really make a difference, but you know, adding wings is cool. So yeah, colors aside, I do think this is a pretty cool robot mode. And the head definitely gets across that whole king aspect from the name, because that's definitely a crown on top of his head there. And also a bit of like a ninja mask almost, maybe not ninja mask, but like something up covering his face, because like unlike a usual faceplate, it totally looks like he's got a nose and this is just kind of covering, like just pulled up to cover his nose. Kind of makes me think a little bit of Nightbird in that regard, just in the way that the non-faceplate sits. Oh, also one thing I forgot to do with the transformation, once the backpack is attached, you can actually flip this panel back and it'll just rest against Airhide, and that gives you a little bit more clearance with the head back there, because with that pushed all the way forward, it still can turn, but it kind of gets in the way of your fingers. So if you push that back, you can reach the head a little bit better. Anyway, the head looks cool. The paint is really nice. I like how they went with the white for the face, the light blue eyes, that black for the face mask, whatever, all works really well when sitting inside this blue that they used for the rest of Regent. And that silver for the crown along the top is really nice. It's an interesting head sculpt. I kind of like how it's got an hourglass shape where it tapers in from the bottom, and then when it gets to this point, it tapers back out for that crown. And also that little kind of chevron on the forehead, which kind of mimics the shape that we've got going on in the chest from the Tokey. As for the articulation, as you saw, the head is on a ball joint, so you get some waggle, some up and down, and some turn. It does eventually kind of crash into stuff here, so you can only turn it so much, but for a Tobot combiner, having an unobstructed ball-jointed head for the most part is actually pretty darn great. For the arms, they do rotate around, but they can't rotate all the way around just because of the big wheels back here. And these are back as far as they can go. You're not going to get those out of the way. So that's as much as that's going to rotate in either direction. For in and out, this is all you get, unfortunately. Just because of the way all of this is constructed. I feel like they probably could have done something to get this wheel out of the way, maybe, and get that to move a little bit, but this is what we're stuck with. And I think for what it is, it's okay. It's definitely better to have it come out a bit than be stuck like that. You do also get bicep rotation, which is fantastic. And you get elbows, which, due to the transformation, can go pretty darn deep. Now, they are sitting in a little bit of a strange spot. They're kind of in the arm. You can see that when you start to move the arm, this bit kind of gets sucked in a little bit, and it does break up the sculpt of the forearm a little bit, but I feel like it's fine, you know? There's minimal space here, and I think it's fine. And because of the placement, it actually works out pretty well, I think. Like, it doesn't look like it's in a weird place. You also get a little bit of hand articulation. The thumb can move in and out because of the transformation, and the fingers can open and close, and they look not great like this. So what I end up doing is pushing them in just a little bit to make it look more like a closed fist. And I think that works a little better. There is no waist articulation, but I think given how this works, that makes sense. However, I noticed this on video from Cora, which you can check out up there, that you can actually use Regent's Transformation as sort of like a, not quite an ab crunch, more like an upper body crunch, but essentially Hyde tabs into the upper section of the torso. So you can actually tilt this up and it doesn't disconnect Hyde at all, but it gives you a little bit of kind of pseudo ab crunch. And that can be really good for expressive stuff, which we'll see later. As for the legs, you can't really get this flap out of the way, at least not with the Tokey in place, but the legs can go forward a bit, can go back a bit. Yeah, they kind of don't want to go any further than that. They can go out pretty decently. You also get a thigh swivel. It doesn't go all the way around because of this kind of bit that goes around the actual joint, but still, you get thigh swivel. And then for the knee, you've got a double joint, but I think the lower joint is the one you want to use here, so you can bend that pretty much to 90, and that, it does still give you the kind of tiny thigh, giant shin thing going, which isn't great, but here at least it makes the thigh look a little bit bigger because of the fact that the joint's down there rather than really being up there. If you want to use the upper joint, you can, but it's not easy to move and it's not going to get you any real extra jointage, so I think it's better to just use this lower joint, which is the easier one to move anyway. You don't get anything on the feet, though if you wanted to, you could push this button to move the foot in, but like, it probably would collapse under its own weight, so I wouldn't recommend that. The articulation on this combiner is actually pretty darn good. And with just a little bit of careful posing, you get this really cool, kind of ready for action looking, hideous colored combiner, which, I mean, this is neat. I don't like the colors. Hyde's green is hideous, but the actual robot, the contours of the different forms, the shapes, the way that some of the design elements, especially in the torso, work together, that is very cool. I can look past the terrible color choices here because so much of the other stuff with this guy is really cool. I love the way that those hands work, the fact that he actually has moving fingers, which I know is for the transformation, but that's still really cool that they work that in. Also, those moving hands have a function. Grab the Tokey, this just pops out of the chest, and with the Tokey out, the chest does look a lot more plain. I definitely prefer having the Tokey in place, but if you pop the Tokey out, you can transform it. So swing that around, swing this down, and now the Tokey has become an axe. And even the way that the Tokey is engineered is actually really clever, because when this handle comes in, it clips into place, and that can make it difficult to get back out. But when you push the axe head out to a certain point, when you start to move it, it pops this out because there's this little nubbin here that moves when you move the axe head, and so when that moves enough, it actually pushes the handle out for you. So that's really cool. Like, they just came up with a way to make it much easier to transform. So it clips together solidly as just a Tokey, and then it's easy to transform into an axe. And this just goes into the hand. You just want to open the fingers up all the way, slide the axe handle in there, and it will kind of click, but not really. I think it's just kind of snapping in with some plastic, but like this can get knocked out of whack. So you just want to push it in until you kind of feel a little bit of a click. And that also looks pretty cool. I definitely prefer having the deco in the chest, but I still like that that's an option. And because of the way that he transforms, if you really wanted to, you could do something like angle the hand forward. You know, you can do one of those like angled forward with the melee weapon poses. It looks a little awkward, but at the same time, I think it kind of works. You can have him kind of holding it down at his side. I think it's cool. Like, there's a little bit of extra playability with the way that he transforms that gives you some surprisingly versatile posability options. But I still prefer this being in the chest, so we're going to put that back together and put this back in the chest. And I found that for some reason, when this bit is kind of crunched forward, it makes it harder to put this into the chest. So I'm just going to rotate this back, get that in place. And there we go. There we've got King Fortran all combined up And I need to readjust this camera because he is rather tall. How tall is he? Well, we're about to find out, aren't we? Here he is with the standard deluxe squad. And, he's a Tobot combiner, so of course he's freaking huge. Here he is with some of the other fellows that make up this combiner. So you can see that if the vehicles that make up King Fortran were the size of these, he would be probably unreasonably large and heavy. There he is with Wild Chief, who's about the same size as the other three, but just in case you were wondering how he fares compared to one of the Tobots from the previous team, or set, or whatever. Here he is with Terrical, which Terrical is still a massive chunk, but Tobot Combiner definitely bigger. Because, of course, I have to pull out the other combiners for this. Here he is next to Big Troll, and Big Troll is definitely a little bit taller at the head and obviously much taller at the shoulders. So Big Troll still earning that title of Big. Here he is with Gigant Saber, which here you can kind of see what I was talking about, how some of the previous Tobot V combiners, not Big Troll obviously, but like the more newer ones, they all tend to do the red, white, and blue color scheme. To be fair, there's mileage in it. Gigant Saber's colors do look spectacular, especially compared to the Crayola explosion over there. And here he is with the Duck Tank. So that will do it for Tobot V King Fortran. And again, this is a set that I was put off at first by the colors, but once I kind of got over that, which still gonna bug me that I wish that at the very least Airhide wasn't this terrible green. Once I made my peace with that, the underlying robot is actually very cool. The actual design of the robot is neat. The integration of the different parts is cool. The contours and shape and silhouette are nice. The articulation is really good for a Tobot combiner. The transformation and engineering is actually a lot of fun. Like, I really like how Power Loader transforms. Even though it's simple, it does so much. It's just those colors. Yeah, they're ugly, in particular the green for Airhide, but we still get a really, really cool looking robot out of it despite those colors. And if you are interested in it and can get past the color scheme, I highly recommend it. But I've gone on long enough. That has been my look at Tobot V King Fortran. What do you all think of this guy? Or what do you think of any of the Tobot V combiners that we've gotten recently? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done and want to support the channel, there is a Patreon option which you can check out. It's just one tier for $1, and that gets you early access to new videos, access to the occasional behind-the-scenes posts that I make, and eventually I want to start doing polls. So if you want to have a little bit of input in what might happen with the channel in the future, that is an option. With all that out of the way, thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art, even if you don't agree with the colors, is more than meets the eye.